depression, anxiety, suicidal feelings, psychotic breakdown, drug or alcohol, having an affair, acting out, anger. Oftentimes you find out this, as they say, is a secondary emotion. So with my friend, he's having stress in his personal life or at work, and he's feeling upset about that, and then bang comes this anger over something that is seemingly unrelated. And as you said, Shade, withdrawing from others, isolating. These are not good things. These are a lot of unhealthy ways, aren't they, that people can react. Right? And I think one of the things from a pastoral perspective that is very, very important to tell people, and I think you think, oh, people know this. No, they don't. Christians are not exempt from suffering. You know? And I think a lot of this, well, I won't say a lot of this, some of these unhealthy reactions that people in churches exhibit when they go through a crisis is due to a flawed theology. Mm-hmm. Somewhere people, they pick up this reward and punishment system. Mm-hmm. God is like Father Christmas. He's like Santa Claus. You know, if I do good, meaning read my Bible every day, pray, you know, witness, evangelize, etc., tick off the list, I'm building up brownie points with God. Mm-hmm. This is the theology of Job's counselors. And you see this with people. So I'm ahead. I've got a lot of ticks on my list. I've been doing real good. Me and God, we're buddies. All of a sudden, bang, they get diagnosed with cancer. A loved one suddenly, shockingly passes away, or some terrible crisis happens. And they say, whoa, whoa. I'm way ahead. I should be getting rewarded. Why are these terrible things happening to me? The theology is flawed, but it's Job's counselors, isn't it? Because Job, what were Job's counselors? That was their whole theology. You know, you are suffering. That's indisputable, Job. Clearly, you're suffering. You've lost everything, and your health is down the tubes. So you must have done something wrong. You must have sinned at some point along the line. Therefore, God is punishing you as you clearly deserve. So the answer is what? Find out what you've done wrong, repent of it, and all this will go away. That was what they said, isn't it? And it's the same thing that you read about in John chapter 9. You know, Jesus and his disciples are walking down the street. What do they see? Here's a guy that was born blind.
Yeah.
What was their question?
Who
sinned? That this man was born blind. It's the exact same theology. So you go back to Job, you think, well, people don't think that way. No, they did in the New Testament. Somebody sinned. That this man, it was either him or his parents. That's the reward and punishment theology. And a lot of Christians have this belief that if I do enough stuff for God, I'm on his good side. And I'm therefore immune from suffering. And then when the suffering happens, they fall apart because they don't know how to handle it. They can't cope. You know, I've seen this. My father-in-law. You think this is back in the days of John and everything? No. I was there in Seattle. My brother-in-law was coming. They were driving him back from the court. He was going through a divorce hearing. His wife was a terrible wife and mother. She had numerous affairs on him. She was a terrible, neglectful mother, on and on and on. They had documented proof that she had affairs, that she'd neglected her children. She let them run around the neighborhood when they were 3 years old without supervision. I mean, it was shocking what a terrible mother she was and wife. Guess who lost? He lost the court case. The court didn't care that she had affairs on him, and it was all documented. It didn't matter. She got custody of the children. He was made to pay $1,800 per month for her to maintain this lifestyle. He completely lost his court case. And it's shocking, you know. Come driving up in the driveway, and I get out of the car, slam the door, and whoa, what's happened? What's happened? His first thing was, F God. Except he didn't say F. F God. What? F God. Why would you say F God? F God, I've had enough of this church, and I've had enough of that. Whoa, what happened? We lost the case. She got custody of the kids, blah, blah, blah. F God. So, what? Doesn't he see all the good things I've done for him? I mow the lawn every week. I clean the church every Saturday. I painted the building last year. I helped out. How could he do this to me and my family? F God. I'm done with all of it. And that's exactly the theology, isn't it? It's a reward and punishment theology. Doesn't God see, this is what he said, all the good things I've done for him, mowing the lawn, cleaning the church, I didn't deserve it. And so acting out, saying, F God, I'm done. That's the reward and punishment theology. So, as pastors, it's very important to teach people. As a Christian, you are not immune from suffering. And when they go through crisis events, which they inevitably will, we all do, rather than acting out, we can help them work through these things. All right? So, the last thing is, acting out. Conflict resolution. Conflict resolution. As we said before, as a pastor, will you have to deal with conflicts?
Why?
Yes. Most people, how many of you enjoy conflict? Dealing with conflict? Having to confront someone when they're out of line. You enjoy it. Yes, the wisdom of son. You're the only one I've ever met. We'll bring him along. You're telling me you enjoy confronting someone when they're angry and shouting and screaming and effing and blanking. It's not a good, pleasant place, is it? To try and calm someone down, figure out what's going on, work through it. And we're going to go through in the next session, in this pastoral wheel of insight in the next session, a good counseling tool to be able to help people work through it and identify what the actual root issues are. Because as we see, most of the time it's a secondary thing, isn't it? They're blowing up or acting out, but actually that's just a symptom, isn't it? That's not the real root. The root is something else. It's the behavior is the symptom of the problem. So it's inevitable, isn't it? Why though? Aren't we good, loving Christians who are followers of Christ? Didn't Jesus say, "By this shall all people know that you are my disciples, by your love"? And yet Christians, some of the worst treatment you'll ever receive as a pastor is by other Christians. Isn't that true? Mm-hmm. Or just simply watching other Christians tear other Christians apart. Gossip, slander, lies, backstabbing. It's shocking in a church. And yet it happens all the time.
Very subtle.
I never had hardly any conflict in my life until I became a pastor. And then all of a sudden it was my fault. Everybody else's problems were my fault because I failed them.
You made the wrong decision. You should have done this. You shouldn't have done that. It's all too easy for people in churches to sit back on the sidelines and criticize the leaders. Well, you shouldn't have done that. You should have done this. You should have listened to me. You shouldn't have listened to her. You should have done that. It's always your fault. It's inevitable, though.
It's okay if they tell you to your face.
To my face?
No,
or your face?
No, if they tell you, if people say all those things and they come and tell you to your face,
But most of the time they don't.
They don't. It's like cancer. They tell this person.
They always tell somebody else.
Somebody that you were okay with yesterday, you say, oh, hello, and it's just like, oh, she's mistreated people.
It's inevitable. This is like your church business meeting, or maybe this is your typical church service. Someone's launching himself over the table at someone else, and they're trying to hold him back, and this poor guy is tearing his hair out. It's inevitable though. You can't help it. You want to put on the boxing gloves and just go after somebody, or maybe take off the gloves. Bare knuckle it. The fact that it is handled is of critical importance. Now, why do we say that? The fact that it is handled. Why is it critically important to handle conflicts and resolve them in a healthy and productive way? Why?
Because they don't go away on their own.
Yeah. As you said, it's a cancer that will spread. It's like Paul says, it's a yeast a little tiny bit of yeast, you chuck it in the lump of dough, what happens? It spreads through the whole lump and the whole thing. And Paul says, you got sin problems, you got conflict, not only did they not go away, they actually intensify, don't they? And it's like it is literally like a cancer. And it's disunity, it's dysfunction, people sense when the church is an unsafe place. So if you're a pastor, it's inevitable. You have to handle it. Critically important. Secondly, or why, we said why. If you don't handle it, it won't go away. It will spread. And the message will get sent that this is a place where it's okay to hurt other people or to be hurt by someone. It's not a safe place. And as I've said before, the church, when I became an elder a long time ago now, this is what we discovered, was that the previous elder team had essentially allowed people to get away with all sorts of terrible things we're talking 10, 11, 12 years. They didn't want to know. They didn't want to confront. There was a couple people that were very aggressive, angry, people were afraid of them, basically. And they essentially controlled the church. They had gone around hurting other people. Yeah. So you had a bunch of people that had been hurt. You had these people that were essentially, you could say they were abusing with their anger, their gossip, and terrible things that they said about people. And it created an environment whereby it was unsafe. And we discovered all this as we went along, and then we had to handle it, and it was not good, not fun. But then the other thing is how you handle it. How you handle it is critically important. Again, why? Why is it important to handle it in I will say, more effective ways? There are less effective ways to handle conflict. There are some that are more effective, a lot of ineffective ways. All right. What we always used to say is, do it right and do it right away. That was our kind of mantra. Do it right and do it right away. I mean, there's a right way to do it. There's a lot of wrong ways to do it. Why do you have to do it right? Why do you have to do it right away? As you say, it won't go away.
So that it doesn't escalate.
Yeah. It'll escalate, because as soon as someone gets the message that she can abuse someone or that he can do something to someone else and get away with it. I mean, oftentimes felt like I was a teacher on a school playground with a bunch of little 3- and 4-year-olds beating each other with sticks. If the teacher allows the kids to beat on each other, then they'll just keep doing it. But the second you stop it, and you say, no, you can't hit her, you can't hit him back. No, I won't allow it. You're the playground teacher.
See,
please no phones if you texting, messaging. Okay? Phones. Alright.
if you run a business, it's really easy because you just tell them to pack it in or they get the sack, you know. But when you're pastoring in a church, it's almost an impossible situation because you have to walk this fine line between shepherding and heavy shepherding, because you can do more damage being too hot on your toes dealing with things. Sometimes you have to let God deal with it instead of yourself, you know. And for me, it's really difficult to know when I need to jump and when I need to let God do something in their lives, you know.
And this is the thing. One thing is for sure, you can't ignore it. You can't hope it'll go away. It won't go away. It'll escalate, as you say. What time is it, by the way? How much time do we have left? They've stolen our clock.
It's
10:38.
So I've got an example. I don't have this handout, but I'm going to give you a case study. Let's discuss it as a church, okay? Now I want you to imagine that let's say you're a pastor of a church. If you're not already, you don't have to imagine it. All right? Now this actually happened in our church, going back about 7, 8 years ago now. All right? So here's the case study. Now I want to see how you as pastors will handle this from a biblical point of view, from a pastoral point of view, from a leadership point of view. What would you do? All right, here's the case study. We were sitting in church one Sunday morning, all right, as you do, before the service, and everything was great, you know, a couple hundred people in this building. and they had this slideshow that came up, right? You had the youth pastors. It was a couple. They were engaged to be married, all right? So they were about to get married in about a month or so. And the Friday night before, they'd gone to the youth group, and the kids played a little joke on them, right? So they had this funny little thing that the kids did for this guy and his fiance. So they made her. She wore like a suit, like a tuxedo, and they made him put the wedding dress on. They went to a charity shop and got like a cheap, wedding dress and all that. And so they did this mock ceremony where he dressed in the wedding dress and she wore the suit, and tied her hair back, and they did a little wedding ceremony for this couple. It was all fun and they had a good laugh, right? And the couple they went along with the gag and did the whole thing, and they took some pictures of this thing. So they said, oh, we've got this special little slideshow. We want to show you this. This is really funny. Steve and Rachel, they're going to get married in a month, and with the youth group, we did this funny little thing. We played a little joke on them on Friday night at the youth group. So they showed these slides, and they showed him, walking down the aisle, and she was wearing the suit, and he was wearing the dress. It was all and there's about 10 or 15 pictures of them, in this thing. About 5 or 6 slides into, I heard this couple literally shouting in the back row, and I thought it was all part of the gag, and they were saying, "That's an abomination." It's and I thought, oh, this part. And everyone kind of laughed. Oh yeah, it's funny. Oh no, there was no joke. This couple went storming down the aisle toward the front of the auditorium, and they were yelling out, "Turn that slideshow off! That's an abomination! That's against the Bible!" And they're, whoa, ranting and raving. And everyone's kind of, it was this weird, awkward thing, like, whoa, what's happening here? You don't expect that in the middle of a service. They were yelling and screaming, and they ended up turning around and stomping back out the door and slammed the door and left. And it was kind of this stunned silence, like, what just happened here? Anyway, come to find out, they came to the elders later on, and they explained why they had this outburst. And they said the reason we were upset was because according to the Bible in the book of Leviticus, what does it say? It says that a man should not wear women's clothing and a woman should not wear men's clothing. And that, what you saw in that slideshow, that's against the Bible. It's an abomination to God, and you as a church shouldn't be supporting that and showing those images to the church. What are you doing as leaders, as a church? All right. So, you've got a conflict on your hand. That is a big conflict. It's a shouting, it's an explosion in the church. Okay, we've got a couple of issues here. One is the use of scriptures. All right? They're taking a verse from Leviticus. I think it's chapter 29 of Leviticus. A man should not wear women's clothing, women should not, and it actually should be taken out and stoned. Okay? So let's talk about that. You as leaders of this church, you've got this conflict on your hands. There's a lot of issues that we need to look at. One of them is the use of scripture. Another one is how do you deal with it as leaders with this couple? What do you do with the couple? Is that acceptable behavior? First of all, what they did, blowing up in a church service and storming around, yelling and screaming. What about the youth group? What do you do with the kids? Because they felt terrible that this had happened. And were they in the wrong? The youth group. What about the two leaders who went along with the gang? Are they in the wrong for putting on the clothing? All right. And then the other thing is what do you do with the church as a whole? Because you as leaders, should you address this publicly at some point to the church? What do you think? Okay, let's talk about the use of scripture. What is that? Is that a legitimate use of scripture in your understanding? Quoting from the book of Leviticus to say that it was an abomination. Is that a fair use of scripture in your opinion? Or not?
Not unless you're going to put every single Old Testament law on the New Testament church. And then there's no bacon at the men's breakfast.
Yeah. I can guarantee every single one of you at this moment is breaking the law. If you look at your tag on your shirt or your jacket or whatever, it's probably woven of cotton and polyester. Right? It's in the same chapter. It says you should not wear clothing woven of two fabrics. You're all lawbreakers, every one of you, and me too. Probably.
Chantal is wearing a pair of trousers.
So that's the issue then in terms of hermeneutics. It's not a legitimate use of the scripture, because if you're going to take, especially selectively, it's a selective use of the law, because by the same hermeneutic, by the same interpretation, they are just as guilty, because clearly, I'm sure they're wearing clothing woven of two fabrics, and it's in literally the same chapter, and yet they're screaming about a picture of a man and woman wearing a dress. So what would you say would you sit down with a couple? Would you say, okay, we need to meet? Would you go through with them?
Yeah.
How you're interpreting scripture, that's a discussion to be held. What would you say? Is that an incorrect use of the Bible?
To be honest with you, I think there's so many situations to deal with within that one conflict that I found from experience that if you try and do everything at once, you're more likely to shoot them off and anger them more. Whereas the theological side of it can be dealt with later, but the outburst was an outburst. So it was out of, I would sort of address the situation of them sort of the way they handled it, and the fact that they could have come and saw the elders privately after the meeting, and I would have got them on side first to see that their behaviour was unacceptable, and then later on said, oh, by the way, let's look at these scriptures together. Yeah. Because if you just go in it and say, right, you're wrong,
You're just confronting it head on.
they just sort of burst out again and leave the church.
If you push someone too far, too fast, isn't it? Even if they know perhaps in the back of their mind that they're out of line, they'll dig their heels in rather than admit they're wrong. So again, that we've said before, that it's handled is critically important, but how it's handled. So if we were, let's say we were the leadership team of that church, this has just happened, whoa. We need to sit down and figure out what's our strategy. What are the most important things? Maybe that's the first step to take, isn't it? Let's strategize as a team. What are the issues? What are the actual issues? Let's write them down and say, okay, there's 4, 5, 6 separate issues. Now, we can't tackle them all at once. In fact, it's not possible. What are the most important ones to deal with? And then how do we deal with each one case by case? So we'll bring the couple in, right? So what are we going to say to them? What would you say to this couple? Would you focus more on the behavior first? Is that acceptable?
No.
To do that in the middle of a service, blow up and start yelling, ranting, and even if they had a point to make, still, you don't make it that way.
That's it. Even if you're right, you're wrong.
Exactly. It's the sentiment may have been, let's say, there's something behind it. Whatever that is, we'll deal with that. But we as a leadership team, we can't have people free to do that. That's the message we need to send. So going back to our greenhouse effect thing, our job as a leadership team is to create a safe environment. That isn't safe, is it? When you allow people to rant, rave, scream, yell in the middle of a service, even if they have a point, there's a way to express it. What would you say to them? How should you handle it?
Was it about the point, or, as a leader, you must know the emotional side of everyone? Maybe that couple was scandalized, and some of them, when they scandalized, they got a way to react. You need to think about that also, because sitting there, they saw the picture, they were scandalized, and they just behave.
Yes.
And as a leader, you need to take all in context and see how you need to approach them.
Because as it turned out, the reason they were scandalized was because they had a twins, might have been one of their own children, who had become transgender.
No.
Ah, you see, there is an issue there. And they didn't know how to cope with this situation. A sex change and all the rest of it. In their mind, it turns out they were quite fundamentalist in their view, very straight up, you know. So in their mind, what this person was doing in changing gender was absolutely wrong. It was a sin all the way down the line, but yet they were a close family member, a daughter or a son, I can't remember who it was. They're trying to wrap their heads around, we still want to love this child, but we can't deal with what's happened.
What's up?
All of a sudden, up on the screen, here comes, in their mind, they just went straight to that. And said, you're promoting cross-dressing, you're promoting transgender, you're promoting LGBT value. Boom, and it was against the Bible, all of these things as well. Boom. So we've got a couple of pastoral issues in here. What's going on with the couple? Because as we find out, more often than not, when there's a conflict, it's due to something else going on that we're perhaps unaware of. That then leads, the blow up was just a symptom of a deeper issue, much, much deeper. They need pastoral help and counseling to work through the issue of the transgendered son or daughter, whichever it was. And then there's the scriptural issue, there's the issue with church. All right, now at what point then would you go, okay, let's assume we've worked something out with the couple. Maybe they left the church or maybe they stayed, but we help them out. Would you at any point, let's say even in the next Sunday, would you stand up before the church and say, listen, you know, okay, this happened last week, many of you were here, we dealt with it as a leadership team, and I mean not necessarily go into all the detail, but just say, what would you say? Would you address the whole congregation as a whole? What would you say? You don't want to throw them under the bus necessarily, but what they did was wrong in the context of how they expressed it. What would you say to the church?
Considering that everyone saw what happened last week,
Yeah.
so they need to know that it's not acceptable for them to behave that way in front of everyone.
Yeah.
Because it might happen, you know.
So the message, if we're going back to our value of that, creating that greenhouse effect, we're creating a safe environment. People have to know, because you don't know how that affected people in the church. That there may be really hurting people that you got issues and problems of which we're totally unaware. So there needs to be a message sent that, you know, we as an elder team or leadership team, we're right on top of this. We did not just stand by and go, someone else's problem. No, it's our problem. It's our problem. We dealt with it straight away. So we did it right and we did it right away. We didn't let grass grow under our feet. We're on top of this. Okay, so you know when something happened, we're not going to ignore it. We're going to deal with it in a healthy and productive way. If you have a problem, whatever it is, how should you handle it? Is it okay? Is it acceptable to scream and yell in the middle of a service? What should you do? You come to the leaders, express your concerns in a productive way where you're not yelling, screaming, effing, blinding, whatever. There's a way to do it, but it's putting it back on them, isn't it? And then you're letting people know that you are helping to guarantee that it's a safe place, aren't you?
Yeah.
Now, and what ended up happening?
But I think before you go public, you need to prepare the couple.
Yeah, we would say that was the first thing. We've done that in the week. Now we're a
You need
week.
to speak to them that
Yeah.
on Sunday we're gonna do this.
To the chat.
Yeah, to the church. Because if they're part of, but at the end of the day, you don't want to lose them
Yeah.
as a Christian. You don't want them to go back. You want them to stay in the church.
At times, and if they don't get a chance after the church service to speak to the leaders and everyone, then if it doesn't happen that way, then gossip is totally behind the leaders' back starts. Because when the church finishes, every church member will start like, you know how people are. It's all, you start talking to them, even those who thought it was right. Now they're going to entertain the ones who are yelling it. That isn't right. And so that's also a conflict in the church.
Yeah, and I think going back to Stephen's point, I mean, identifying what the issues are as best you can, then coming up with a way to deal with each one becomes critically important. you have to prioritize. What's the most important? What's the least? Now,
In this case, there's another issue with the youth club, the youth
yeah,
group.
we haven't
That's
talked
another
about it.
issue.
Yeah, you gotta, because they were quite hurt by it.
Yes.
They felt personally like, what, have we done something wrong? Was that completely wrong? Was it unbiblical? Was it out of line? Are we in serious trouble here? They were really devastated.
You need
So
to see it
that
on
had to
both
be
sides
done.
also.
Oh,
because
yeah.
That is not.
there was also wrong because what was the meaning of that? Them doing that. What was the meaning of it?
No, that's the.
They were just doing it for a laugh.
No,
They were
when-
doing it innocently.
You know,
And
when
the
you
top were leaders
no,
as well, because they were.
don't call them innocent because when you're over 12, that's when the sin starts. Yeah.
Uh-oh.
That's why the sin starts.
Yeah.
What if they
Most
were
of the
11?
people-
No, when you're young, like a 6
Over
years old,
12.
no, it's no sin. There's no sin with them. Yeah. When
You are
you're
mature
over-
when you are
When
12.
you're mature, it's 11, 12.
You know what
Now,
you're supposed to do,
those
what
after
you
when
cannot
the
do.
youth is 14, 15 years old.
You are not a
They're
child.
there. They know what is wrong and what is right. Now, what was the meaning of them? Making the older one dress as a man and the man dress as a lady. What was the meaning of it?
Whatever it was, you gotta deal with that issue
Yes.
as well.
Now, that is an issue.
Before we go on our break, I'll tell you what actually ended up happening. And we had a couple of meetings in the week to discuss some of these strategies. And I gave them my insights where, and I recommended that they meet with a couple, that they meet with the youth group, and that on Sunday they needed to make an announcement about what we just said. They did meet with a couple. They didn't meet with the youth group. They just told the youth leaders to deal with it, which they kind of did. But I think you, the elders, need to meet. They didn't. And they never made an announcement on the Sunday. They never said anything about it afterwards.
No, that's wrong.
And the couple left the church. And there was always this question of what happened, So in my judgment, my opinion, the elders handled some of it okay, but on some of the bigger issues, they really needed to step up and deal with it. They dropped the ball. And I think it hurt the church in the long run for a lot of reasons. And I thought, you guys didn't see it through. You didn't see it through to completion. You saw a couple things through, but then they just left it, and it ended up doing more harm than good, I felt, in the long run. So how they handled it was critically important.
Yeah, it was a leadership problem also because
Yeah.
That's why it has fun, I'm sure.
who showed the slide? Who prepared the slide to bring to the church?
You use the youth.
I don't
the
know.
youth.
It was the youth work.
It was before the church, on Sunday.
Yeah.
That's a leadership problem.
But then
Everything
somebody
they need to
go,
bring there must be controlled by the leader.
but they okayed it. And that was the
That's
thing.
another problem. That's a